So Huxley takes place 3,000 years after this apocalyptic event on this planet. Humanity sort of destroyed itself through wars and fighting. And after these events, AI sort of takes the wheel back from humanity and it's just like, you had your shot. It's our turn. I've been thinking about this for a long time, but now in our daily lives, we're kind of getting to a lot of this, almost on the brink of this actually happening. So with the character design and clothing, a lot of my intent was to try to create something that felt different and otherworldly, but believable. And a lot of that was pretty intuitive, just sketching things out. I like to be pretty loose, and sometimes we'll use like Copic marker to roughly do a light sketch, but a lot of those early shapes will imply certain types of armor cuts and clothing patterns. And during that process, trying to make sure everything's functional and feeling like the character can rotate their arm or something. Or if I make it a little abstract in the drawing, making sure to refine that further when I create the final character. But I think a lot of the early armor designs specifically was very influenced by like military history. There's a lot of samurai inspiration in some of the armor pieces, but a lot of it also is kind of mixed with like maybe insect shells and like how the patterns of these shells intersect, but also allow the character to move. So this is Max. He's one of the main characters of the original graphic novel Huxley. He's a old kind of like war veteran in the future and gets teamed up with this young upstart called Kai, almost like a buddy cop kind of story, just like the old grizzled soldier kind of looking for a way out and this young kid that wants to be just like him. And they kind of are going off on their first mission and kind of get caught up on this adventure that changes their fates in unexpected ways. And we kind of follow along on this globe-trotting adventure. Max looking for a way out, Kai wanting to be a legendary hero, and Huxley just trying to discover who he really is and what he really is. This blood red armor and this kind of like samurai-inspired helmet, I feel like is just really instantly recognizable and iconic. We resonate with it, maybe we don't know why, but because it is based in history. So I think a lot of those things, as much as possible, is like taking these cues that we're all pretty familiar with and advancing it into something spectacular or futuristic is really a cool way to do things. So this is Huxley, and he's like the quiet friend who knows more than he lets on. Over the course of the story, we're kind of along on this journey. He almost acts as like the audience throughout the story, like you're experiencing the world and learning the world almost through his eyes. And by the end, he comes to realize that he had a bigger part to play than he originally understood in why the world the way it is and what's happened for the past 3,000 years. And I don't want to spoil anything, so guys read the book. But you'll kind of understand like why he's so important and why the book's named after him. So this is the first drawing of Huxley almost like 10 years ago. I remember I drew it and there was just like, you do a lot of artwork for a job, and then sometimes for the job you do a drawing, you're like, man, I really like nailed that one. I don't know what it was, I didn't plan it, but you just like something clicked. And I felt that way with this drawing. I didn't know who the character was, I didn't know why I liked it, but I knew there was something there and a story that needed to be told. And I kind of illustrated it and colored it and turned it into the kind of the character you see here, kind of cropped, and that turned into one of the covers eventually, and was able to retain as much of that character and personality as we went into 3D and turned it into a full character model. I drew and designed everything by hand, especially in the world we're going into with like AI and all this other stuff. I feel like we're losing a lot of that. So it was really cool for me to draw and design every single thing directly from my mind into pencil, into the paper, and translate that into a unique character. So this is the Demon. It's a Phantom class robot in the world of Huxley, and I kind of imagine it as something that could, like eat a Terminator for breakfast, and just looks like the most horrible, evil, indestructible thing you could think of. So on the Demon, the things that clearly stand out are the kind of like really boxy face, almost looks like a bird, kind of like wings in a way, the many red glowing eyes with the kind of like spikes in the back. A lot of the artists we looked up to in school was like Doug Chiang and Ralph McQuarrie and all these guys. So seeing how they designed a huge universe like Star Wars in like drawing and painting form was always really inspirational. But then also I'm obsessed with understanding where the genesis of an idea comes from. So like you see that and you're like, wow, that's cool. But then you trace a lineage back of like, okay, but where did that idea come from? And then where did that idea come from? And usually it comes from nature. Things look like what they are. A shark looks like it's fast because it has evolved over millions of years to be fast in the water, be a predator, find prey. All its sensors on its mouth can smell blood miles in the water. And so if we can put those qualities into imaginary designs or science fiction designs, that just makes it more successful. So this is Carmack, and he's sort of the brutal crime boss running the underbelly of Machine City in the Huxley universe. He's modified himself with old world technology to extend his life basically forever. No one knows how old he is. Everyone who knows how old he is has been murdered or died off, and he's kind of got this purple hue glowing quality to him from like transfusing his blood and fluids into this kind of like advanced tech from the old world. It's almost a little like undersea creatures like jellyfish and things like this, channeled through my creature design over the years. Just I love these kind of organic fluid forms turned into this mixture of human and sea creature mutation, horrible brutal crime boss that these guys encounter. So this is Tarada. He's like an ancient warrior that was kind of reborn and now lives and curates this kind of what I refer to as a blue forest in the Huxley universe. Huxley meets Tarada in the blue forest and learns about how he came to be, and basically he was an ancient warrior and kind of fought in these like nuclear wars thousands of years ago, where there was these giant war machines called Titans that were used by humans to basically destroy themselves. This blue kind of fluid came up from the earth after the wars and kind of like brought him back to life. And from there, it kind of spawned this giant forest. And he basically, for being brought back to life, dedicated the rest of his life to cultivating and protecting this giant forest. I think some of these patterns are very reminiscent of some like very tropical fish that I like. But I really wanted to go wild with the colors with him. There's a lot of influence from like French graphic novels and a lot of my favorite artists like Mobius and things like this. In Huxley, there's a lot of mixture of like Japanese and French artistry and history that I love and kind of merged together through a American sensibility. Cultures that I'm personally inspired a lot by and artists from those countries would be Japan and France. People like Otomo and Shiro and Yoji Shinkawa and Miyazaki and French artists like Mobius. A lot of it was just I loved the things they created, but on a deeper level, wanting to understand the lineage of where that comes from. Traveling to Tokyo, traveling to France, and when you walk around those cities, you're like, I see it. I see how they came to those conclusions now. Whereas me growing up in like a suburb in America, like how do you even come up with these patterns? How do you come up with this like architecture? But you go to Tokyo and you're like, oh, I see it. I see Akira. An artist influenced by their environment going directly into their work. So things like that were really educational too, just understanding the environment that people grew up in, how that influences their visual library. So this is Scrape. He acts as sort of a guide in the story to Max Kai and Huxley. He's basically been a prisoner of Carmack's under his gangster bar, and he's been stuck there for doesn't know how many years. And Max Kai and Huxley falling down there, he finally has a chance to break free, and they work together, and with all of them together are strong enough to kind of like break through the underground and get out. And because Scrape is so grateful, he helps them get to where they're going next. So the technology of Scrape is super ancient. He's a very old, one of the most mass-produced kind of worker robots from thousands of years ago. These are all over the wastelands, and a lot of these would be things that something like the Demon would take out energy cores. They're not super powerful. They're not very like special at all. There's like millions of these, but there is a reason there's so many of these, and there is a reason why they still exist in the world, and there's a reason they were built a certain way and built to last, even if they aren't the most advanced robot in the wastelands. I can relate and understand these characters, and I mean, the person you understand the most is yourself. So I think a lot of it is just like putting your life experiences into these things so it's as relatable as possible, at least to me. And if you experience that, like, I want this moment to be like this because this is what happened to me and this is how I felt. And if I can capture even a little bit of that, I feel like people can connect to that a lot more than if I just made something up. In some ways, I feel like an old, grizzled person working in my industry like Max. But I also remember a time when I was excited and was super fascinated with life and excited about every little thing. And I feel like Kai embodies that personality. And Huxley's a little more introspective and is curious about the world and trying to figure things out and find his place in the world. So it's like all these different parts of myself are kind of in each character. So this is Kai. He's like the young recruit that wants to kind of prove his worth and show that he can be the next kind of like big shot, the big hero. So with Kai's armor design, it's very similar to Max's, but for the helmet, I tried to make it slightly different. Like maybe this is like a recruit helmet. Max is maybe like a final Ronin commander helmet, and this is like a Ronin recruit helmet. A lot of it also I wanted to almost be like a black line, even though there's two goggles in there. He has like a black line and Max has almost like two goggles. So there's a bit of it's like two dots and a line to kind of also make them a little visually distinct as well. The gun is the same as Max's. It's just kind of like this Reaper assault rifle with plasma fire and also ballistic fire, depending on the ammo types and energy modifications they want to put into it.
Where are we going?
To the garage/workshop. I do a lot of like toy prototyping and collectibles and stuff. So I have a bunch of 3D printers, different types of 3D printers. This is the Bamboo Labs X1 Carbon. Basically makes like a solid toy when it's done. So I was doing prototypes of like the full-size guns from HUXLEY. So this is like Max and Kai's rifle. It turned out pretty cool. I mean, I had to do it in 3 or 4 pieces and kind of glue it together, so it's a little janky, but I was impressed how it printed like the kind of ribbon, like this kind of cable. Like I didn't have to do anything. I just was able to print all that. But then we had all these like key cards and stuff just to see how that looked. So something they would use to like get into Machine City and just see how that looked. That was pretty cool. This one's a bit smaller, but this is like the Dark Soldier Dreamwalker rifle. It's kind of a variant of the Ronin Reaper rifle, but just kind of more of a industrial railgun looking design. I still have to do a full-size version of that, but it turned out pretty cool as well. It took about a day to print the entire thing, just because it's so big. The bigger the volume, the longer it takes, and then glue it all together. Yeah. My wife thinks it's cool. I mean, it takes up space, but like she wants to make toys also, so it's like I'm doing all the trial and error. So when she does it, she's like, "What do I have to do?" And I could just tell her all these settings, do that. She's cool with it. And these are like a resin printer, which is how most toys are manufactured or prototyped. It's way more fine. You can get like small Warhammer type designs, super detailed. I can Wi-Fi airdrop it to this and it can start printing, but it's pretty finicky, so you have to make sure the resin's at a certain temperature or it won't stick to the base. And so you have to constantly be checking it. It's super messy and toxic. But once it's done, then you can take it over here into like an alcohol wash and it gets all the extra resin off. And then you can cure it in these like UV light. And then you kind of have an early prototype of your design. It also helps to see what details show up and what details kind of don't show up. But it's also cool to see like printing a full size Max helmet in his gear and stuff, and it actually printed pretty well. It just needs a lot of cleanup, and I think it's still pretty wet from the resin. These are all the projects I worked on over the years. Worked on Elysium, Valerian. This is my robot design, the K-Tron. Worked on Halo Infinite for about 6 years, so it's cool to just have like all these projects I worked on over the years, kind of gallery of what I worked on and now what I'm working on. I tried to do a bunch of full-size, almost like Sideshow collectible-sized versions of the characters. There's also a ton of kind of early prototypes and test prints So all these are very early, like some of them are failures, some of them are, so this was trying to figure out almost like Warhammer size. If we did like smaller collectibles, how would those look? Some bigger, middle-sized one. Like it prints pretty well. A lot of these details I thought would fall off, but it actually printed quite well on the Demon. So on The Hobbit, I was mainly involved in the wargs, the big wolf creatures in The Hobbit. Did some exploration for the elven shields and working with John Howe and Alan Lee on some of their designs, helping flesh those out. Some of the quivers and things. I'm fascinated by civilization going from nothing to an advanced society and how they've done that. And Japanese and Chinese language especially is so shape-based and very artistic. So like everything they do, I feel like has a very strong sense of graphic design, and they're always thinking about design because all their language is very complex and you have to memorize all these different shapes and meanings, and especially like samurai culture, like all the different armor designs, all the different type of weapons, and the way they think about work resonates with me hugely. A lot of times they will pick a craft and just do that their whole life to become as good as possible about that. And it's almost like, this is my purpose for my life. And I'm not good now, but over the course of my life, I will become a master at it. And you have to get up every day and do that over and over and over again, like sharpening a blade. Just like every day is your blade sharpened, and it will never be done. And if you stop, the blade will get dull. And so every day you have to do this over and over and over again. So these are the oracles, and they are the rulers of Machine City. There's typically 3 of them. They're kind of the physical manifestation of the AI deep within the city's core underground. They basically manage and expand this giant empire, creating the Ronin soldiers, making them the best weapon they can possibly be. So their staff, it's made up of all these kind of like brands. And in the trailer, we see that the oracles kind of pick one of these and brand the soldiers, the new recruits, before they go off on their mission. And this process is sort of a rite of passage and initiation into the Ronin army. Not only is a visual thing, it also kind of activates powers within these soldiers. The original graphic novel, it's almost like a small story in a big world. And I wanted this to be a big story in a big world almost. So we see a lot more, we understand like how these soldiers are born into this world, how they are part of this giant war society run by machines and AI, and how humanity's place fits into this giant world where they're no longer like the dominant species anymore. Within the Oracle story specifically, we get into this moral dilemma of humanity surviving controlled by AI and machines, or humanity without AI machines, but they have their free will back, but probably going to destroy themselves again. So it's this constant fight of, this isn't perfect, but we will survive and have a good life. But with our free will, maybe we're truly free, but we'll probably destroy ourselves again. What is the right answer? And the Oracle story goes through these 2 clashing moral dilemmas, and it's probably something that we're going to have to experience in our lives too, where there's already like pushback from a lot of these early AI systems with like art and programming technology. A lot of people are just like, I'm not touching this, get this out of my life, this is an affront to humanity. And other people who are embracing it and saying, well, you know, it's not perfect, but this is just the way it is, and this is, we gotta use this and kind of like work with this, or we're gonna get left behind. And we're kind of dealing with this now, but Huxley takes it on a more grand, kind of futuristic scale of how this might play out. So this is a Necro Trooper. These guys are like hired gun mercenaries in the underworld, working for the highest bidder. In our story, Carmack is the main kind of like boss of these guys, who's hired a squad of these guys to protect him, try to keep things simple, and then focus all the attention and detail to a point where I want the audience to look, and kind of did that here as well. In Machine City, we have the Ronin, these kind of advanced super soldiers. In this other society underground, we have, these guys are basically like the Ronin of their culture. These guys have to blend into their environment And so they kind of disguise themselves to look like the demon and kind of blend in so they don't get killed by the phantoms and the demons that they live around. So the Ronin characters in the story go down into like a kind of like a hive almost, like a den, and all these robots are kind of strung up and are connected to the giant network. And there's a kind of a demon down there feeding on a giant energy source. And these guys have basically covered themselves in robot parts, covered themselves in cloth, and the antenna around them put out a signal that kind of masks the fact that they're humans. All these elements kind of makes them look like a human version of a phantom in a way, but it's almost like camouflage, like humans trying to live with wolves and dressing up like wolves. The vehicles I really wanted to look quite different and memorable as well. The original Onyx craft in the graphic novel, a lot of it was similar to how a lot of the characters were thought of as like a color script, like 2 red characters, an orange character. The craft I really wanted to stand out. Some of the later crafts, this sort of bigger dropship in the Oracle is a bit more complex, definitely more inspired by like modern military craft and heavy duty kind of stuff, whereas the other craft is a bit more playful, and it's supposed to be a much more ruined further off in the future, so a lot of this more advanced military tech is gone. So thinking about things in time as well. So this vehicle is called the Onyx. It's Max and Kai's main mode of transportation in the graphic novel. They use it to fly out to missions, can haul junk and other things back to the city. A lot of their missions involve scavenging and finding rare items to take back to the city, and but some of the details underneath, I was drawing reference from like NASA thrusters and things. So like when it lands, it can fire these thrusters that are on like NASA shuttles to slow down for entry. So there's a lot of thought into some of those elements where these are real things on real vehicles. We looked at ejection seats on fighter jets for like their seats, so that it looks really realistic and detailed. For the Onyx, I don't think there was any like real strong reference point. Oh my cat. Yeah, having fun, enjoying life.
Who's us?
This is Pepper, our dog. She's 1 year old and keeps us company now when we work. Wish we had her for all the other years, but happy to have her enjoying our working times during the day. Yeah, how you doing? So this is the Assault class dropship in the HUXLEY universe. It's a much bigger craft than the Onyx. And during its time, it's a much more advanced sort of military craft that the Ronin used for like larger scale missions. Especially for the new trailer, we needed this like big military dropship. A lot of this was sketched out by me in Blender pretty quick, and I wanted this kind of like aggressive trident kind of shape, these 3 sort of like points. But it was cool to see this come to life. We were able to like detail this pretty well and see how it looks with troops coming out and how they get in and out. We designed the interior of it. A big kind of like set piece and thing that was missing in the HUXLEY universe from the original graphic novel, just showing the scale and scope of this big empire. So this is the Titan in the HUXLEY universe. It's kind of this giant ancient war machine. We see glimpses of it in the original HUXLEY books. You can see some of the early comic panels here. And when it was getting mocked up, it wasn't quite right, and it wasn't looking like my original sketches, so I went into ZBrush and sculpted it so it feels like almost exactly how I wanted it to look. So that was really cool to be able to do that, where if I need to step in, I can sculpt exactly what I need and send it to the VFX guys, and then we kind of destroyed it more, and so the face looks right, and the shoulder pads and things match up. And it's basically this giant, like, skyscraper-sized robot nuclear war machine kind of thing that was used in the old wars, and a lot of the remains we see now are just like buried in the sand that get revealed. And in the Oracle story, Machine City and the Oracles try to hunt some of these remains down for their energy cores, which can help power the city. So they're pretty sought after to find these ancient ruins of some of these big war machines for parts. For Machine City, I wanted to feel like almost like a futuristic Roman Empire or something, just a sprawling metropolis built by machines and AI, what would that look like, and how would they expand it out into the desert? So a lot of it is really built in segments, almost like walls of a city that keep expanding. The outer wall is the most protected, but they're always in the process of building a new layer of that wall and then expanding that out. And it's all kind of like built to protect this beating heart. In my mind, is a bit closer to Machine City in the Oracle, which is much bigger. But by the time we get to Huxley, that city has, I don't want to spoil it, but something happened to that city, and now we're in a new city called Machine City 1, which is like a new city trying to become as grand as the old city. I had all these drawings in the comic, and then I had to work with my map painter friend to tell him how I wanted to look from space. So kind of establishing this kind of like ring-like structure. Maybe it's a little exaggerated, but with all these kind of spires going out. Was born and raised in Rochester Hills, Michigan. Mom's like an interior designer, and my dad is kind of just a businessman. It wasn't until later, I think in high school, when I had to decide like what am I going to do for a living, that I think art and design came more into play. I think Halo specifically is what tipped me over the edge of just like, man, is there a way I can do this for a living? When I told my parents I wanted to be an artist, work in the game industry, my dad immediately told me no. He, of course, wanted me to be like a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, like something reliable or dependable. So a lot of it was me showing him this is a legitimate job, this is a legitimate industry, here's the salaries you can make, here's the school I want to go to, and this is how much it will cost, this is the investment, and this is the return on the investment. Like basically just had to have a whole presentation of all that. This is kind of how it all started. When I was younger, I used to make these animal dinosaur snake books, and it was pretty cool to see this. My parents sent me this a few years back and completely forgot about it, and was obsessed with all the dinosaurs and creatures and animals. Apparently obsessed with copyright, my 9-year-old work as well. It's interesting to think about because like the things I was interested in as a kid, nothing's really changed. It's just a lot better at it, I guess. So it's cool to see like the dreams I had when I was little, I'm still kind of doing that. I think my inner child would be very happy. I saw all the people I looked up to, like all these art heroes like Sid Mead and Scott Robertson and all these guys. And they were the people I wanted to learn from, and the only way to learn from them at the time was going to school called Art Center College of Design. And Scott and Neville Page and all these guys were teaching at Art Center. I was like, well, I got to go there. I got to go to the source of the information. And I switched all my classes to industrial design, and after a term I had an industrial design portfolio, and they allowed me to switch tracks so I could learn industrial design and entertainment design. And that kind of got me started more about filling in all these gaps in my skill set that I just didn't know existed, and understood that I really needed to understand how those foundational skills to become the artist I wanted to be.
I'm Tian, I'm Ben Mauro's wife. We met in 2012, a long time ago. I'm also a concept artist, and we both work for video games. Most people, I think, know Ben from the sort of ultra-realistic 3D creature design, but actually I liked his pencil drawing most.
Understanding how to do it on paper, I feel like is super fundamental and foundational to everything we do, and those are kind of the core skills that I use every day, is just being able to design, draw, render, and create things from imagination and illustrate them in a believable way is basically like the job. Having those core skills is like everything.
I think he was also telling me that it is one of his dreams to have one of his, his own comic. And I think a little while after we started dating, he started working on HUXLEY. Yeah. So I was there the whole time.
So usually wake up at around around 9:30, and emails are coming in from the publisher, from team members all over the world. Then I'll usually come, take my dog out, get her food, make a coffee, and then get to the desk and get back to work. Work till midnight or 3 in the morning-ish. Pretty much every day, yeah. Just the routine. Not very healthy, but that's just kind of how it is.
I mean, Ben is just a workaholic in general. And it's funny because actually in our wedding vow, my vow for him started with, I love Ben for his crazy work ethic.
There's sort of like a pool of imagination that exists. George Lucas made Star Wars and expanded this pool of human imagination, like, oh, I had no idea that could exist. And then the next person comes along and tries to push it a little further. I feel like an original artist will create a new branch of a tree that didn't exist before. Maybe Mobius pushed things here, but then the next artist says, that's cool, but I like this, and they make a new branch of what can be. I feel like the pursuit of trying to push things and expand things as far as possible, which gives the next generation an even bigger pool of information to have that they can push further. It's like passing the torch to the next generation of artists in a way of like, here's how far I tried to expand it, now it's your turn. Some of the bigger milestones this year is the worldwide published version of the original graphic novels finally coming out in around May, trying to get some of the bigger things locked in, going out to studios to try to work on a bigger game or movie or TV series, make sure the book releases does well. The book after that, Oracle, is planned for end of the year, so there's a lot of planning a strategy to make sure that second book is great as well.
The first drawings that I saw was just that robot, the yellow robot, HUXLEY. I was just like, wow, this robot is really cool. It's very unique. And then I think he started building the story. I don't think he started drawing out all the characters first. I think he just started the pages organically. Back then we were traveling together too. We were traveling, out of our backpacks for 3 years together. So while we were traveling, he was doing some of the pencil sketch. And then outside of his other freelance work,
the first pages were all done on the road in like hostels and internet cafes. And I kept all the originals in this kind of binder like this. There's still a lot of individual sketches and things for individual panels where I had to draw over, scribbling things out. A lot of times I would have to print something out. I had painted a lot of the other things, but I didn't have pencils for certain elements of HUXLEY, and I would do it separately and then scan it in and comp it into the painting. These are actually the first pages. So this is like the first 1 to 14 pages, and basically it is that. So this is like black page, Max Kai looking at HUXLEY, and basically those shots, this little scribble of, I know what I want it to be, HUXLEY all messed up against the wall, and just much more detailed version of that. But yeah, I would map things out like this for bigger sequences like this for sometimes 5 pages, sometimes 10, 15, if I knew exactly what I was wanting it to look like. A lot of it was just like drawn on paper. I have like a portable Epson scanner that I don't think I have anymore. So I'd be in like a coffee shop and just like scanning this paper, waiting for a flight, and it would go into this binder and hopefully not get destroyed over the years. I could do this where you just sketch out, say, like 50 pages of the general idea of what I think I want it to be. And if you kind of take a step back and look, you can start to see the general like silhouette of the character, and the ones that feel the most successful, I already know the proportion and everything looks good. It's just a very organic way of kind of creating chaos with the intent of what you're trying to make. And then you can kind of already get a sense of like, okay, I think this is going to be pretty successful. I just have to like detail out and refine the character. So that was a pretty good process.
Over the years, there's also been some times where he's just totally stuck, right? There were times where he was like, okay, I'm gonna spend 3 months just on HUXLEY. And at that time, we don't have a lot of money, so he actually had to go back to his parents' home. But he actually got stuck when he was there, just focusing on HUXLEY. I think the travel and being in a sort of challenging situation makes him wanting to work on Huxley even more. Being able to do another job actually helped him to work on Huxley in his own time.
My wife supports all this, but it definitely wasn't easy. Early on, there was maybe a year where I started working on Halo, and it was a pretty steady job. And of course, my first thought was like, I should take all my salary and fund an adaptation of a trailer of my book. So basically that meant we were going to be living pretty modestly for a year because most of my funds was going to pay for the team. And she was like, yeah, okay, that'll be worth it. Like, let's do it. So things like that where a lot of people I feel like wouldn't be like, what are you talking about? You have a nice job and we can like settle down and don't have to stress. And it's just, okay, it's worth it. That will be very cool. So these are the first Huxley books that we got proofed out. This was actually the first one that I ever made before anything was done. It was just, I probably was on like page 5 or 6. It's just a blank book. So it felt real because it's all just kind of like digital books on a hard drive somewhere. And it gets daunting to think about how much work is still left, where it's just, this is probably going to take me 3 years. And then after you get 3 years, like, I probably got 2 more years left at this pace. And stuff like this helps. We're like, no, it's going to be so cool. I'll be able to hold my book. It'll be on the shelf next to Akira or something. Like, oh, that'll be so awesome. So all the original 6 issues from there kind of ended up here for the final. So we kind of went from this to something like this for the final. Yeah, it was pretty cool to see all 6 of them together. And also just kind of thinking about like the characters, the color, the sequence of them. So my inner child would want to buy all of these. This was something I had for maybe like 6 or 7 years when I was getting overwhelmed with how long it was taking me. Was, okay, how long did it take Nausicaa to get made? How long did Akira take to finish? How long did Metabarons take to finish? So when I was 4 years in, I was like, oh, well, Nausicaa took 12 years. Akira took 9 years with help from other people. Metabarons took 11 years. So it helped calm my anxiety a bit, because you just get these spikes of anxiety where it's just like, oh my God, it's taking too long. I've already been working 4 years. Why, am I too slow? Am I stupid or something? Like, why am I so slow? But back to the kind of like sharpening the blade, you're like, nope, they did it. That's how they did it to make sure the quality was great. I can do it too. And you kind of just shut up and get back to work. There's so many different versions of Akira. And the original print run of Akira and Watchmen were these very small limited edition single issues. And they're really hard to track down now and quite expensive. But as someone who just loves the books, I really wanted to own a set of those. Early fans and collectors could get these super limited 6-issue version. This would be sort of like the general release, almost like the Watchmen version. And I think the final is going to be pretty close to this. Just a really nice, like, hefty book on our shelf. So after the single issues, I really wanted to make some sort of like really special collector edition version for all my early collectors. And that turned into these 6 different variants of rarity of the edition. And each one is sort of like the standard version, sort of an all blood red version, half gold, full gold, half holographic, full holographic. And each one has a very limited run of books. Like, I think there's only 2 of these ever manufactured. This maybe has like 20, or it's just very low volume. So trying to do something really special and a super limited run for my early collectors. Yeah, it turned out really cool. Just metallic finish on the spine. So trying to make just like the most premium book I could think of that no publisher would probably make. Like, no one's going to use these materials. So these are the final ones where you can see the material is like a little less shiny. This one's a little more matte. This is like in the middle. But the final one, it's like, I can do this all day and it holds up, right? But if I do this here, I've already damaged that book, right? So after all that, in May, you'll be able to go to the bookstore and pick up Huxley.
Huxley was done in the span of 10 years, right? So during those 10 years, he picked up more books, more learnings along the way. So I think the story evolved as we evolve as human.
I guess a lot of what I'm doing now is kind of following the footsteps of Otomo, or even early days of Miyazaki. He wanted to make a movie called Nausicaa, and the animation studio was like, yeah, we're not going to make this, no one knows what this is. And then he started publishing weekly pages of the manga in like a monthly magazine, and it got so popular that they're like, okay, we'll make your movie now. But then he also had to keep finishing the panels, and I think he was almost like 40 or early 40s when he did it, so he's like, I'm getting old. If this fails, I'm done. This is my shot to make something great. And he kind of knocked it out of the park, and that led to him just directing animated films basically since then, and building a legacy of his imagination and his unique stories he wants to tell. And as much as possible, artists should try to take their shot, or even if it's scary or risky, like if you have a moment to go for it, you should take that opportunity and go for it and try to bring something new into the world as much as possible.
My hopes for Huxley in the future would be the video game, because I'm in the video game industry. But honestly, jokes aside, I would say probably Huxley the movie first, because I think that's been sort of dream. I think it would be cool to see a full-length feature film for Huxley. Definitely want to see some Huxley toys. Probably not in my office. In his office is okay. Not my aesthetic in this room, but in his office, I would love to see a lot of Huxley toys. Yeah.
I remember when I started on the graphic novel, people were like, oh, it's going to take so long, why would you do that? And it's like, well, the time's going to pass anyway. What else would I be doing? Like, I'll be 3 years older and I didn't do anything. Even if it was tough, by the end of the year, I feel like there's physical proof of that year of my time that I existed. My time on Earth or whatever. I don't know if that's morbid or something, but adding to something that I created, it's like raising a kid or a child or something that will live on long after I'm gone. People can read Dune and watch movies about Dune and long after Frank Herbert's gone. So I like thinking about that kind of lasting legacy of what I did with my time and what I'm leaving behind. It's really important to me, yeah.